Morgan. Would you believe me now? If I told you I got caught up in a wave, almost gave it away.
Wow, what an honor to be here. And like, it's so hard when you hear your bio. It's like my heart's just like racing faster and faster. I'm like, wow, I guess I did do all those things. I don't really feel like I did, but it's an honor to be here. Who's having a really good time here today? I know I am. I moved to California. I'm from Georgia originally. Any Southerners in the house? Any? There's a few of us scattered about. But yeah, I moved to California recently, 2 years ago, and I've like, ever since the beginning of Yellow, I'm like, I've got to make it there someday. And I'm such an introvert, so the some days are real when it comes to public events. I'm like, someday. And then me and Joanna just met through Instagram, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm coming this year. This is the year, 2019. So the past few years of my life have been really wild. As Ingrid was reading my bio, that kind of gives you a synopsis of how I ended up here. I graduated from college, and I was like, I just want to work, regular job. Like, I was creative, but I wasn't really interested in the arts. But I ended up working as an admission counselor, and there were some changes happening in the company, and I wasn't able to move with it. So I was jobless, and I didn't really have a plan B, because I thought my plan A was pretty awesome. I was going to go to grad school and be a professor and all this. But that ended up turning into a season of just uncertainty, of highs and lows, of traveling, actually. I have a sister who's younger than me, who's a singer-songwriter, and I actually just went on the road with her. I was newly married, and my husband went too. He became her tour manager, and I became like, hey, I'll fold some shirts, or I'll sing on stage too, or I guess I can play guitar too, so I'll do that. And one thing led to another, and before you knew it, I was living in Nashville and recording music. And as grateful as I was for that season of my life, it just really, it took a lot on me, and I felt exhausted and I felt tired. And long story short, I kind of came out of that season into what I'm doing now, and I receive thousands of messages via direct message on Instagram and via my email of people's stories, and I create artwork around people's stories. So I'm just going to share a little bit with you about that journey and how I got there, and I hope that in listening to this, like, if you have a moment where you're like, okay, I'm kind of listening to her, but I kind of have an idea, please write down your idea. Like, for me, I'm not, like, I hope to just be an inspiration for the things that are already inside of you. Like, if I say something that triggers something in you and ignites something in you, like, you're like, I'm sorry, I gotta go record a voice memo and say this, or I gotta write this down, please do. Because I know I wouldn't be here without the people who inspired me to just be in the moment and create and not wait till later. So don't wait till later. If you think of something for your own business or your own ideas or your own dreams, please go for it. So with all that said, I'm going to be talking about the art of small. Because even though what I do on social media with my art has turned into a big thing for me, I mean, it's become a huge part of my life. It's my full-time job now. My husband was able to recently come off his job to help manage it. It's become a big thing for us, and it's something we are constantly talking about, and how can we continue to grow this and to build this in a mindful, intentional way. But it started very small, as a lot of big things do, and that's why I love what Liz was speaking about this morning about things starting small, and that is definitely my story. This right here, you'll see on the screens, is the house that I grew up in. On the left, well, wait, is that your left? Wait, yeah, that's your left, sorry. I was determined not to, I was like, I need to have that memorized. I didn't, oh well. But on the left, you will see that is the library, and that was the library that was in my house growing up, and those bookshelves, they go all the way up to the ceiling. And growing up, people used to come into our house and say, wow, like, this is so amazing. You all have a house with like bookshelves in it. Like, it was so like stately. But those bookshelves came about from my dad just going to Home Depot one day, and he was just like, I'm gonna build some bookshelves. And we were like, okay. And a few hours later, he had built these amazing bookshelves, and we were like, wow, like, he did this with some wood stain, and and some Home Depot wood, and he built this beautiful bookshelf that was a huge part of my childhood. And on the right, you'll see a bright red baby grand piano. And I actually had to text my mom about this because I forgot the amount. I'm looking at her text right now. Okay, there it is. And I was like, Mom, how much should you pay for that piano? And she said $80. And with that piano, my mom just has this way of like finding things, like really nice things at just random places. And $80 was actually a lot for her. I thought she was going to say more like 20 bucks. Like most of the stuff in our houses were like, it was on the side of the road. Somebody else didn't want it, or it was $20. Even now, anybody know like the Let Go app? That's like my mom's best friend. Like my mom meets all of her friends on Let Go. Like it's so funny. And we talk about it openly. So she knows that I say things like this. It's just, we just let her go. I'm like, that's just her thing. Like, my mom loves it. She loves finding bargains and then painting them bright red. And this was like right there in the house. And the house I grew up in was like over 100 years old. And we think it used to be a Civil War hospital, but no big deal. And it's just all these stories. And they all started from these really small beginnings. And I consider myself very blessed that I had parents to look up to who weren't afraid to dream, who weren't afraid to like do things like that. And it even extended beyond the four walls of our house. And on the left, you'll see what looks like a church, sort of, because that is a church, but it used to actually be my bedroom right there where that arrow is, because my parents are like, hey, what if we turn this house into the church? My parents are pastors. And so that's me on the right on demolition day, literally tearing down my childhood bedroom and turning it into a sanctuary. And it was just like, that's just the kind of childhood I had. It was just yard sales, garage sales. It was thrift stores. It was finding old buildings and turning them into something new, turning our bedrooms into places where the keyboards and the drums are going to be. And that was just how I grew up. But as I got older, as much as I enjoyed like watching my parents, and I have one sister who's younger than me, and she's very big personality, and she's like has all these cool ideas. And one of her cool ideas was, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And she started doing these YouTube videos that were like satirical videos on being homeschooled, because we were homeschooled naturally. I feel like all my stories, it's like, oh, okay, all that makes sense now. But yeah, we were homeschooled, and she started like making these like sing-along, like silly videos on YouTube. And before she knew it, she was like getting booked on tours to like do the skit and then to do music and all this stuff just from her YouTube videos. So now in my immediate family, I see my mom and my dad and my sister all take like these small things and like turn them into things like beyond them. And I never felt like I had any of that. I was just like, I'm in this family of creative people and people who are making real impact in the world, but like, I don't know where I fit. I don't know where I belong. And right here on the screen, you'll see a progression of what kind of happened with my sister and I with music. And this was all like with my sister. Like I couldn't have done it without her because I was just too introverted. I was like, I can't do shows, but she really encouraged me. So this first show was one that I played by myself, and my mom and dad came, and my sister and my cousin, and it was a blast. And the second show, my sister was like, okay, I'll play with you this time. A few more people showed up when she played with me. And that next photo, it's like, that was probably like the biggest stage I played on by myself. And then the next photo was just like a room full of people, the crowds getting bigger and bigger. And it was really cool to be a part of. And a lot of times I was singing, background to my sister, and people would ask me, they're like, how does that feel? You have a sister who's younger than you, like doing these great things. Like, are you jealous of her? Like, is she, like, how do you guys navigate that? And I would always tell people, I'm like, no, I'm not jealous of her. Like, she worked really hard to get where she was, and I'm really proud of her. My sister has a neurological condition, and she's overcome a lot with that. And I'm like, no, I'm really proud of my sister. I'm really proud of my sister. And one day, I was telling that story after someone had asked me that question, and they said, but what about you? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you talk so highly about your sister. You talk so highly about your dad and your mom and the work that they do. And by this time I was married, and your husband and like his cool ideas and all this. But what about you? Like, what do you do? And I couldn't answer that question. I was like, well, I do like to write. I do like to sing. I do like to play. I do these things. But I was nowhere near as excited about sharing what I did as I was about the people around me. I felt small in comparison to them. I was like, maybe my role is to just kind of play the background. And maybe my role is to just kind of be behind everybody and be behind the scenes. And there's definitely, of course, seasons of our life where we have to be behind the scenes. But for every single person in here, for every part of your life where there's something to be behind the scenes for, there's something where you've been called to the front. And I think that that's true for all of us. Like, it's not just like, oh, these people are always in the front and these people are always in the back. I think we can support each other in different ways, and sometimes we're in the front, sometimes we're in the back. That was not something I understood. I was like, no, I don't really think I have anything to say that would be worthy of putting my name on it. I don't think I have anything that people would be interested in. And I struggled with that for a long time, well into my 20s. I'm 29 now. But from age 20 to about 26, I just kind of like, anytime somebody would ask me, but what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Even though I was doing things, I was out there, I was working, I was doing music, I was doing creative, fun things. I didn't really have much to say or share. I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to kind of do what I'm doing. Like, I'm really like type B personality in that way. I'm just like going to go with the flow. Like, I don't really have to like put myself out there. And all of this was just sort of like how I kind of lived my life. I started to live my life this way. And then on one night when I was 26, this is November of 2016, I was sitting at home by myself, and my husband was working late that night, and it was raining outside. And this was after a season of like just being on the road with my sister and traveling and doing music. And I was considering coming off of the road as much, but I didn't know what would be next. And I was like, everything will be cool. That was kind of my mindset. I'll figure it out. But then I just hit a wall. Like suddenly, it was not like something I could coast through anymore. Suddenly, it was like, you haven't figured your life out. Like, you do not know what you're doing. And it was just like all these voices that I now know I had been suppressing. I've been trying to tell myself, like, ignore that. Don't worry about, things going wrong. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep coasting. Everything will be fine. And I was just trying to coast, But that night, those voices were stronger than anything I have ever felt. And I was like, I am a failure. Like, I'm not just playing the background. I'm pretty much invisible. I could just disappear. Who would know? Who would care? I was just looking at my life, and you know how you get those moments sometimes where it's like, no matter how much people encourage you, or no matter how many times you can like look at your accomplishments, you're just like, no, that wasn't enough. I'm not enough. I am a failure. And I felt that way. And for the first time in years, I don't know why, I went to my journal and I opened it up and I wrote a poem. I hadn't written poems in like years. And I wrote this poem, and I'll share it with you what I wrote. When you start to feel like things should have been better this year, remember the mountains and valleys that got you here. They are not accidents, and those moments were in vain. You are not the same. You have grown and you are growing. You are breathing, you are living. You are wrapped in endless, boundless grace, and things will get better. There is more to you than yesterday. And thank you. And it's still really heavy for me to read that. Like, I probably read that out loud maybe a total of like 4 times by now, and I wrote that in 2016. And if you look at the bottom and anybody who's like into graphic design or lettering, you might notice this a little bit. If you look at the bottom where I wrote my name, it's like in a slightly different lettering style. It's like kind of off to the side. And that's because I was getting ready to take a picture of it so I could like post it somewhere or something. And at the last second, I decided to write my name on it. And that was huge for me because all of those raw emotions I had poured out into that piece. I was still in that moment where it was like, I know that's my story. I didn't feel like I had the courage to own it. And it was, I mean, you can even look at just how small I wrote my name, the way I wrote it. It was not even my handwriting. I wrote it in all lowercase, just like, as if that was going to make people not see it. It's just like, I don't know the logic as to why I did that, but there was no logic. But anyway, I wrote it like that, and at the last second, I was like, okay, I'm going to share this. This is the moment, like, I'm coming out of my shell. I'm doing something. This is new. This is different. Like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Okay. So I took a picture of it, and then I went to Instagram, and I got ready to post it. Like, I went through all the little pages you have to go on Instagram, every page. And then I got to the share part, and as my thumb, like, went to press share, I just pulled it back. I said, nope, I can't share this. Like, this is way too vulnerable. Like, this is not cool. Like, this is so, I don't know what people are going to think. Like, just all those things that go in your head when you get ready to publish something. And I just chickened out. I just completely backspaced it, and I was like, no. And then I was like, well, wait a second. Like, what if I just posted it on Pinterest? Like, not that many people, like, really follow me over there. So at least all like the people who I'm considering are like my critics and stuff. I'm like, they're not following me over there. I'll just post it on Pinterest, and that'll just be my way of releasing this. And because it was heavy on me, like it was heavy. It was very hard for me to write this. And so I was like, all right, I'll post it on Pinterest. So I posted it on Pinterest. This is in November of 2016. I forgot about it. I didn't write another poem after that or anything like that. I just posted it on Pinterest, left it alone. Around January 1st or so, I got a message from someone I knew on Instagram, and they said, hey, did you see this, like, reality TV star, like, post your poem? You write poems? And I was like, I wrote one time, and I clicked on it, and I was like, I have no idea how she found that. But yeah, that is me. So I told her, I was like, thank you, like, I didn't know who the person was, but they're a really big deal. I was like, thank you so much. I don't know how you found it. Thank you. The next day, I got another message from someone that I knew and said, hey, did you see this professional athlete, like, post your poem? Like, they posted a poem on their Instagram story that has your name on it. And I was like, that's definitely mine. I don't know how they found that. And the third day, like, I'm not making this up. The third day, it was like, hey, I was like, okay, wait a second. I got to figure out where these people are finding this. Like, this is so wild. So I went to Pinterest, and I had not realized that that it had been pinned over 100,000 times. And I was like, oh, wow, I have no idea how that happened. Till this day, I've tried to, like, go back through and figure out, like, where it took off, like, who shared it first. I have no idea. And later on, I ended up adding a source link to Instagram. I was like, I guess I might as well. And I added, like, tags and all that later, but when I first took a screenshot of it, it didn't have any of that on it. I didn't have tags or anything. I just posted it, so I do not know who found it first. I do not know how it began to spread. So I was like, okay, that was big. That was really big. I wasn't seeing that coming, but still, I did not see this as like a sign of a new adventure or a sign of something I could get into. I was just like, that was just a one-time thing. Like, that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, that was just like random God thing. I'm just gonna leave that alone and carry on with my life of uncertainty and trying to find peace within it. And, but that's just not how life works, because as it turns out, the most vulnerable thing I'd ever shared at that point, other people had felt that way too. And people started sending me messages saying like, hey, I don't know where you were in your life when you wrote that, but here's what I've been through, and this is why it spoke to me. And it was the most convicting experience I've ever had, because suddenly something that I wrote about career failure and self-esteem and not feeling like I was good enough, there were people messaging me who had been through far worse than I could ever imagine, who were saying, this spoke to me, this spoke to me. And that told me something that I didn't even know was possible. And it showed me that just by taking that small step to share something that was so hard for me to share, like it would connect. It would connect with other people. And I realized that I had not been believing in myself. I had not been seeing what I was worth. So then what I decided to do next was I was like, well, I guess I could like do art too. Maybe people would like that, maybe. And I started to use art as, I would love to tell you that I use art as a way of like adding to my brand, but I didn't. I actually use art as a way of like, I don't know if I have enough words, so let me just like put some colors around it and try to like make this look like something. So literally that first poem I showed you, like I if you go back on my Instagram far enough, you'll see it. Like it's like, wow, she keeps posting that same quote over and over and over, but like with different colors. Because I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to go there again. I don't know if I'm ready to like dig deep. So I went to Home Depot, like my parents do, when they want to make something, and I bought some spray paint and some water, and I was just like, I'm gonna paint stuff, like. And I bought a bunch of little like 4x6 cards, and I just started painting and painting and painting. And I would just, write words on it. And then I started to like send them out to people in the mail. So like people were starting to follow, and I was like, okay. And I would just write the same words over and over. There's more to you than yesterday. You're wrapped in endless, boundless grace. Like I wasn't really writing many new words, because that was hard. It was hard to get to that place again. So I just started going with what I had, and I started just using these small art pieces to kind of like just release it, because I was feeling it. It was starting to get heavy on me, and I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that when you're building something, you start to get feedback, and people are like, "Hey, this spoke to me." Like you start to feel that. It starts to like keep you up at night. You start to think like, "Wow, like is there a way I can help people? If there's a way I can like be a part of something bigger," and that's what was happening for me, even though I was still terrified. Like, when people are sending you their stories and they're telling you what they've been through, it's like, this is so much bigger than me. So I just started painting, and I started painting. And on the left, that was like my studio. We were living, out here in Orange County, and I had like this cool access to an outdoor studio, because we had just moved to California, and we were living with my sister and my parents. So, rent was cheaper that way. And I was able to have like a full outdoor studio, and it was amazing. And I was making all this art and occasionally putting words on it, and occasionally writing more and more, like slowly, just slowly, like one poem at a time. Like I'm talking like one poem a week, just like slowly adding to this while all these colors and all these paintings were coming around it. And this was such a beautiful season. But my husband and I, were actually about to move, because our lease was ending at that place, and we're about to move to like a much more typical California spot where it was like, one bedroom, and we weren't gonna have like studio space. So I was like, well, what am I gonna do now? I know, I'll just pack all this up and take it with me, and I'll just figure out how to paint in the living room or something. So not very logical, because as I started to pack, this is what it looked like. And there was just stacks of paper everywhere and just stationery, and I was just like, this is not going to work. And I was devastated. Because I was like, man, like, I finally found something, Like, I finally found something that I felt like I could just, like, get in a rhythm to, and just, like, sprinkle little words of encouragement here and there. But what I realized is, like, even then I was hiding. Even then I was trying to stifle what was in me, because I was afraid of what might happen, good or bad. So I had to move on. And about a few months, and I think this was like right before our lease ended, like right before we moved. So everything was pretty much packed up at this point. I had given a lot of the paint supplies away. I was actually in Georgia, and I was just staring out the window, and I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I was like, since I can't seem to get over this, like, constant fear and self-doubt of like how I'm going to be received when I share these deep parts of me, since I keep trying to like carve my way through life without actually fully stepping into the present and fully talking and finding language around what I'm experiencing, since I can't do that, what I'm going to do is just make what I do about one person at a time. Instead of trying to write for followers, instead of trying to write for my critics, instead of trying to like make things that I feel like will make me feel safe and make me feel like I'm doing this the right way, instead of trying to make this perfect collection of artwork that I feel like is just flawless, I'm just gonna focus on one person at a time. So on October 16th, 2017. I posted this on my Instagram story. I called it a flash giveaway. I don't know why. I still don't know why I said that. I said, writing, drawing, custom pieces for you. Send me a DM telling me a little bit of your story in a sentence or two or something you have been through. Number 2, I'll create something and DM it back to you. Number 3, I'll share it here too. I won't include your name though. I'll keep that part anonymous unless you don't mind your name being shared. Either way is fine with me. Looking forward to your direct messages, Morgan. So I posted that October 16th, like kind of in the evening. Forgot about it. That next morning, I woke up to like hundreds of DMs. And at that time, like I didn't have like a lot of, I think I had like 10,000 followers at that time. And it wasn't really like engaged followers. Like I heard someone else talk about that earlier. They were like, yeah, I had like 25,000, but it wasn't engaged. That was kind of like that for me. It wasn't like a really engaged audience, but I was like, you know what? There's some people that might respond, but I was wrong because the people who followed me, they told their friends about it. So I was getting messages that said, hey, my friend told me that you're an artist that's writing things for people's stories. So here's some of like the first 2 pieces that I created. I can't remember if it was that night or the next morning, but I've created these first 2 on my iPad. Like I was like, well, I can't do the paintings anymore. So let me just get back to the basics. Let me just try something simple. And these 2 pieces were just 2 people who had sent me their stories via Instagram DMs on that next day. And I wrote that. And what ended up happening from that is by responding to people, and honestly, like I wasn't trying to like give them advice. I was just trying to help people find language for their own experiences. And even though I was still like trying to find language for mine, I just felt like I think there's something to this whole human connection thing. And I think when we talk to one another and we have conversations with one another, the art comes to life on its own. And that's what I started to find. I still was struggling with self-doubt. But for some reason, I started to realize when a teenage girl messages you and she tells you the story that you dealt with when you were her age, suddenly self-doubt's not the priority anymore. Suddenly, how this is going to make me look in my career is not the priority. It's, I've been where you've been, and I can at least say that to you. I don't have to have answers, and that's what I learned. I learned that. I was like, it's not so much about crafting the perfect poem. Like, I'm not the most, like, I actually dropped out of my MFA, so like, I'm not, of my poetry MFA, so I'm not like a fancy poet in this. I love fancy poets. That doesn't mean like I don't. But I'm just saying like I'm very like raggedy in that sense. I just kind of write things and I press enter and I go to the next line, and then I go to the next line and I go to the next line. So I say all that to say, yes, it's our stories that matter, but it's also other people's stories that propel it to the next level. It's when we make that connection that we start to forget. We start to realize like, wow, this is beyond me. It's like, I came here feeling so nervous, and then she's feeling nervous too. Or I dealt with that when I'm 16, and she's 16, and she's dealing with that same thing. And I promise you, the second you start to find a way to incorporate hearing other people's stories and just listening, it'll really encourage you to see like, wow, we could spend a lot less time on the insecurities. We could spend a lot less time on the doubts. So what I ended up doing was I wrote a book, and it's just 100, I call them story letters. I wrote a book, and I put it on Amazon, and I was like, hey guys, like you can get this if you want. And it was just 100 stories out of those stories that people had DM'd me. I never would have done that had it not been for other people. I never would have done that had I not started with just talking to people one by one. That's how the art came to life. And here are some of the pieces that I have created since then. I never would have created things like this, which I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of them, and I've had a really cool opportunity to have some great partnerships coming up that is going to take my art places. I never would have dreamed it would have gone, but I never would have gotten there without other people. I never would have gotten there without connecting with people one by one. And I just want to encourage you, whatever your industry is, whatever you do, start small. You can speak in front of crowds, you can have a lot of followers, you can do all these things. So at the end of the day, it's these one-on-one connections, it's these interactions that we're having, even in our text messages to our family members. That's where the poetry lives. And these are just some of the pieces. This one on the left, I had written that one for someone else. You are where you're meant to be. But I just had a little baby. He's hanging out back there with my husband. He's so precious. He's 2.5 months old. And I wanted to, thank you. I wanted to make a piece for his room. And I was like overthinking it. I was like, I don't know what to write for him. Like, I felt like I had to write a life mantra. So I was like, I'm just going to take something I already wrote and I'm just going to make art around it to match his room. And I did that. And that ended up becoming one of my most requested pieces. I started an online shop and people were like, where can I get that? And it's something I made for my son's bedroom. That's what people are connecting with. Same with the one on the right. That was the one that I made for someone that I know. So doesn't have to just be strangers. It can be people in your life too. These are 2 other pieces that I wrote for strangers, people who had messaged me. They become some of my most top shared pieces. And both of those lines were I almost didn't even write that line. I was just adding it because I was like, maybe this helps say it a little bit more what I'm trying to say. So you just never know. And I want to read this piece on the right because this is it's kind of poetry, kind of prose. But it's become one that has a lot. It kind of has a lot of people sending me messages about it. And it's something that I wrote to someone where I didn't know what to say to her. And I was just trying. Her story was heavy. And I just wanted to say something. Let this be the August you always remember. The August you chose to believe there was more to your future than you were able to see. The August where you learned to trust that after everything happened in time, you would grow. You would grow in the courage to open up again. And you could look forward to new unknowns, believing that no matter what would happen, you would still grow. You would still be worthy of love, even though you were made to feel you were not good enough. Let this be the August you chose to rise above. Let this be the August where everything changed and you decided you were free to move on, heal, and never be the same. And thank you. Thank you. And I wrote that in a moment of I'm not even sure if this makes sense. And sometimes when I'm sending these stories, I don't know how people respond. Sometimes people send me an essay, and sometimes people say, "Okay, thanks." And both I'm grateful for, but it's I have no idea. I have no idea. But it keeps a healthy sense of mystery, and it keeps me on my toes, and it keeps me just remembering why I do what I do. So I have a few short pieces that I want to just leave you with that I kind of wrote from what I remember, things that had to do with creativity and exploring and stories. Telling your story. You are brave, even in the most subtle ways. And you may not always feel like the fire that you are, but you will shine on anyway. Tell the story of the mountains you climbed. Your words could become a page in someone else's survival guide. And this last one, and this will be the last story that I share. I don't share a lot of the details of the stories that people send me because I just want to create a safe space for them to just let it all out and share. But I will tell you that this story was from someone who had just been really discouraged and had been told no in a lot of places in their life. And as I read their story, I saw my own story. And it's in those moments where I feel I can at least let that person know they were not alone. And I want to say this is for all of you as well. This is the season she will make beautiful things, not perfect things, but honest things that speak to who she is and who she is called to be. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're amazing. We have time for 2 questions. If anyone has questions, we have time for 2. Yes, I see someone right there.
First of all, thank you for writing words that are home to all of us. Second, what are the words that you need to hear right now?
Wow, I love that question. The words that I need to hear right now. The biggest one for me is rest. And I've actually been writing about that a lot because, I just had a baby and rest is kind of a rare thing. When you have a child, you don't get a lot of that. And I've learned how to thrive on a little bit of sleep. But, like literally practically in a lack of sleep, like that changes things. Like it really kind of puts me in a place where I'm like, man, I'm not able to do what I was able to do at the same level. And that can really affect me. So that's something that I have just been trying to really inhale and learn that I have to create rhythms of rest in my life, and there's nothing wrong with that. So,
My question was kind of similar. Hi, I'm Dana. Nice to meet you. You're incredible, and I think you have however many people that are here in agreement with that. And you've changed so many lives through your unbelievable gift and talent. And I just want to know, how can we support you on what you're doing next? What's going on? Yeah.
That's so kind. Like, I'm actually terrible at this. Like, I'm terrible at it's so, I feel like this is like entrepreneur, like personal brand 101. Like, oh, you have like a product and you sell it. Like, y'all, I just started an online shop like 3 months ago. I was like, oh, I could sell prints of my art. Like, I feel like it's so obvious. But honestly, but it took me a long time to even, I'm not afraid to say, like, I'm not the most like business-minded person, so things like that, it actually took people asking me like, how can I buy this as a print? I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. So that is the thing, I started an online shop. It's called Garden 24, and we actually, my husband's idea, because again, I don't think about stuff like this, we actually made a yellow code, so you can go get free shipping if you want. Where is it? I gotta find it. There it is. It's called Thank You Yellow. That's what, so yeah, you get free shipping. So that's a way you can support. Like, honestly, for me, I could really sit there and like create art and respond to people's stories all day. But it's like, that doesn't pay the bills. Yeah. So it's like you have to like do things. So really, when you are able to support the shop and all of that, like it really does help like fuel this whole thing. And yeah, that's so hard to say, but thank you. Oh, hello.
You mentioned you're an introvert, and I'm an extrovert, but we all have introvert sides. And I know even as an extrovert, it's really hard to hear heavy stories and not internalize them. It's almost paralyzing a little bit. So I'm curious to know how you can hear the story and then distill it and flip it back and it not take you down, especially being an introvert.
Oh, I love that question. That is such a good question. And that's something that I don't think I had a healthy balance of it in the beginning. But one thing I've had to learn to do is to just, because the way, I'll explain this process really quick if that's okay. So what I do is I allow people to send me stories via my website or my Instagram DMs. And what I do when it comes to my website, I don't see subject lines or anything. And I just scroll through pages and pages and pages of emails, and I just click on a random person. And then I just create art in real time for them, send it to them, then that's when I share it elsewhere. There are some times where I open messages and I just have to walk away for a little bit. Because when you open the door for people to share, people will start sharing, they really will. And people do some really difficult things. And there's some times where I just have to give that person some space, and I'll literally close my laptop and like, go like wash a load of clothes or go for a walk if I can and just sit with it for a while. I still have some like pieces that I've started in my drafts in my email that have been there for months. Because I'm like, I don't know what to say, and I'm still really, I want to respond to them eventually, and I will. But yeah, it's definitely something where I have to learn how, sometimes it's okay to take a break and to come back later.